Welcome. So, hello, my name is Lance McCarthy, and I'm very proud to be the Chief Executive of the Princess Alexandra Hospital. And I want to thank you very much for coming tonight for the second of our virtual public events about the new Princess Alexandra Hospital. Really fantastic to see so many of you on the call, nearly 100 of you. Thank you so much for taking your time on a Thursday evening to dial in and help us to shape the new hospital and shape it and give us some ideas and thoughts for you and for your families and for your friends into the future. I'm delighted today to be joined by our chairman, Steve Clarke, who will say a few words in a minute, and also by the chairman of West Essex CCG, Rob Gurlis, who will also say a few words at the start about how the hospital and new hospital fits in with some of the really interesting and exciting innovations that we're making to care and care provision across the whole of West Essex. And a big thank you to Rob and Christine Moss, who's on the call as well from the CCG, who've been working really hard and really closely with us, and a number of other colleagues over the last couple of years to get to this stage. Very briefly, in terms of a little bit of Microsoft Teams etiquette, so I'm aware that we use it all the time. You might be less familiar with it, but as we go through the day, the evening, there'll be opportunity to ask questions. There'll be opportunity to raise your hand. There'll be opportunity to vote and get involved and engaged in some of the queries and the questions. But please, can I just ask that you stay on mute if you're not talking, and there's a little chat box on the right hand side. If you click on the little emblem between the people emblem and the hands up emblem, you can type in a query, question, comment, and you can see other queries, questions, comments in the chat box on the right hand side. If you type things into there as we go through the presentations, then myself and Michael, who's our Director of Strategy, will do our best to be able to respond to as many of those as possible as we go through the evening as well. The purpose of tonight is the second event, as I said, our public event, but it's the start of a 5 or 6 year long engagement program. So Michael and I have promised everybody that we really want to engage with as many people who are both current and potential future users of the current Princess Alexandra Hospital and future users of the new Princess Alexandra Hospital, and with all of your friends and your family, because we want it to work for you. And we'll talk a bit more later about why we want it to be part of the community and the new hospital to be a significant part of the community asset. But to do that, we need your views, we need your thoughts, and we need your views and thoughts to help steer us. We've done obviously quite a lot of work to get to this stage, and we've got to the stage where we have enough to be able to talk to you about. And there's always a fine balance between having sufficient to be able to talk to you about and engage with you and genuinely get your views and help and input into shaping our thinking, versus having too much and having done too much of the thinking. But this really is an opportunity for you to shape the new hospital, and we've got a couple of architects presentations in half an hour or so, and they've got some really specific questions that they want from you, which can really help them design the building. We are going to have many more of these sessions over the next few months and the next few years. We will aim to theme them so that they are based on a different topic each time as we develop our plans, and there'll be lots of opportunity to talk about particular clinical models, particular clinical pathways, particular elements of care delivery, as well as the design of the hospital. But today we're using it as an update to give you an update on where we've got to, but also importantly to ask some specific questions about the design of the front of the hospital. But for now, I'll be back in a second, but I'll just hand it over to our chairman, Steve Clarke, who wants to say a few words, and then to Rob Gurlis, the chair of the West Essex CCG. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Lance, and welcome to everyone. It's a delight that so many people have taken the trouble to join us this evening. My screen's already showing 97, and I know some of those are more than one person to a screen, because I've been watching as people have joined. So we're probably over 100 already, which is really good. And it's really important to us that we hear from as many people as possible over the next little while, well, quite a long while actually, as Lance has said, it could be the next 4 or 5 years. But at this stage, the important component for us is thinking about what the design of the hospital is going to be like. And we're trying to design something here that's going to be good for the community for the next probably 35 or 40 years. So it's really important we get as many perspectives on that design as possible. And as Lance has said, we are serious about wishing to hear what you have to say, not just not just run events of this sort. We want to hear what you have to say, and we want that to have some influence on the way we put this scheme together over the next while. So I'll not keep you from the important business that you're going to be engaged with any longer. Pass you back to Lance, who I think is going to get Rob Gurlis to introduce himself. Thank you, Lance.
Thanks, Steve. Rob, would you just like to talk through the work we were doing briefly around the One Health and Care Partnership and how the new hospital is a fundamental plank of that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lance, and thank you, Steve. Yes, good evening, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Rob Gurlis. I've lived and worked in Harlow since 1981. Firstly in the hospital in Princess Alexandra, and then as a GP from 1986, and I've been chair of West Essex for the last 8 years. So I'm embedded in all that is happening, and it is wonderful to see what is happening with Princess Alexandra Hospital. Notwithstanding that, just a couple of reminders. One is that the vast majority of people, their health and wellbeing care happens outside of a hospital. The other fact that we need to remind ourselves is the vast majority of people's health and wellbeing is mostly affected and influenced by social issues, not health. So we need to sort of keep those things in the back of our minds. And if our ideal is to keep people healthier for longer, this involves addressing issues such as prevention and inequalities, things that are, again, close to Lance and Steve's hearts. But again, I think it's things that we need to keep, in our minds when we go through the changes that are going to need to be involved. So to do these things, we're going to need to work differently. And we need to have actually true integration. Integration is a word that's bandied around a lot, but we need to have true integration, and that's between all the services that touch people's lives. So I'm talking about the district councils, Essex County councils, that's social care, the GPs through their primary care networks, the community trust, of course the acute trust, and we're going to hear about that tonight, but the mental health side of the equation, and of course definitely not last but not least, but the voluntary sector. There's probably others as well that would get involved. So our vision of this integrated care partnership, or ICP, that you might see bandied around, is encapsulated in our One Health and Care Partnership, which eventually will be a new organisation that will address all of this and hopefully more. The new hospital, again, we're going to hear about this with its cutting-edge diagnostics and inpatient care and teaching and all the things that go with a 21st century hospital. But new things, specialities reaching out into the community, that's the future, and I think that's what we're all working hard to achieve. So thank you very much for letting me have that little platform to talk about the wider system, but the hospital is an important part of that, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, and again, thank you for all your help and support with the new hospital. And we will pick up a little bit more later through Dr. Monica Bowes, who will talk a bit more about how summer care will be integrated in a different way going forward to support having the right care in the right place for everybody who requires it. So very briefly, why do we need a new hospital? So there's three main reasons why we need a new hospital. The first of which is we have aging infrastructure. We have a number of buildings who are at the end of their working life. They are all safe, but it costs us many, many millions of pounds every year to keep them safe. And they're too small for the provision of modern day healthcare. We also have some really significant issues in terms of what we call clinical adjacencies, which is having the right department next to the other right departments to ensure that that patients can flow through the hospital as effectively and as quickly as possible, and we can be efficient and as effective in delivering the care as possible. Make sure we've got the right doctors, nurses, and other colleagues in the right place. We also know, as a second key reason, that the local demographics are changing. We're all living longer on average, and there is a very large housing expansion planned in Harlow, Epping, Broxbourne over the next 10 to 12 years. So 51,000 new homes are planned to be built over the next 12 years within our current catchment population. So we need to ensure that we've got sustainable facilities and secondary care hospital facilities to be able to manage that increase. And we also know, and we also expect that the local population, everyone in Harlow and surrounding towns, should get access to world-class healthcare. And that's world-class healthcare in the hospital setting and physical facilities, and it's world-class healthcare in primary and community and social care and mental health facilities, as Rob was talking about. So we've got to do something very different to be able to manage the expected local population growth. And the third reason is that we need to continue to work very much more closely as health and social care organisations to modernise absolutely everything that we do and provide care in very different ways to ensure that you and other residents of Harlow and local towns get the best healthcare possible, which is affordable. And we're only going to be, from a hospital perspective, only going to be able to do that with a new hospital. As Rob was saying, One Health and Care Partnership is working to join up our services much better and provide care closer to home where it's appropriate to, and ensure that we provide the right care in the right place by the right person. But we also recognise that the Princess Alexandra is currently a massive anchor in the local community. It's the biggest employer locally, and we've got a huge responsibility, we believe, as well, to the community. So our vision is, of course, to provide truly outstanding care. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a new hospital. The hospitals will be, this hospital has been around for about 65, 66 years now. We are building a hospital for the next 65 plus years. So we have a vision that not only do we want it to be such a facility that can provide outstanding care, but we want the new Princess Alexandra Hospital to be a genuine community asset, a place that people feel comfortable to come to, a place that gives back to the community in many ways. And Michael Meredith will pick up a little bit more about that later. We also want the new Princess Alexandra Hospital to be more than about treatment. We want it to be a calm place, a restorative place, a place for recovery for patients, a place that can be calming for visitors and calming for our people who work in the hospital. And you'll see some of the thinking, and there's some questions related to that from the architect's drawings later. We also want the new Princess Alexandra Hospital to be a place of recreation. We want there to be multi-use spaces that can be used outside of normal hospital working hours or the main base of hospital working hours that can be used by the community. We want the new Princess Alexandra Hospital to be the most technologically advanced hospital in the country at the time that it's built. And we don't want to do that for the sake of doing that, but we want to do that because we believe the use of technology and effective use of technology can really transform the care that we provide in the hospital setting and transform how we interact and engage with you, with patients, with members of the community, and importantly, with colleagues in other health and social care organisations. And again, there'll be some questions based on that later. We want the new Princess Alexandra Hospital to be carbon neutral, and we want it to be sustainable. And we're planning on it being the first all-electric hospital in the country. So again, something that the town and something that the local community can be proud of. We also don't want it to feel like it's a hospital. We want it to feel like a warm, calming, relaxing environment. And we will be using the most modern methods of construction so that we can make it as repeatable as possible, so we can make it as flexible as possible, and so that we have the ability to be able to expand the organisation in terms of size should it be needed to. And we want the new Princess Alexandra Hospital to support prevention, to support education, to support healthy lifestyles, and to support the use of food as medicine. And again, Michael will pick up some of that a little bit later. So we've done a huge amount of hard work to get to this point, and we've done a huge amount of thinking. But as I was saying earlier, this is where we really, really need your help, please. We want your ideas, we want your thoughts, we want your views on what we've done so far. We want those of you, those of your family, those of your friends, all potential users of the new Princess Alexandra hospitals. So please get involved. We'll talk a bit later, and you might have seen on the slides earlier, through our website, through our newsletter, etc. Please don't be shy today. Please put thoughts, comments, questions in the chat box. I've seen a few coming in there. Please get involved in some of the more exciting interactive piece towards the end of the session. Your views really are essential. Your views really, really will make a difference. And the views from our first session from a couple of weeks ago have already started to influence some of the thinking of the new hospital development team and of our architects, and there will be, this isn't your only opportunity, there will be many, many more opportunities to have your say in the future. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Michael Meredith, who's our Director of Strategy, who will take you through a little bit more of the progress, and then I will join you later. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Michael Meredith. It's really great to be here today. This is the second of our public engagement events, and we've been really looking forward to speaking to you, sharing some of our plans. I just want to say, actually, although some of our plans might look quite advanced, they're not. We are still working with the public to ensure that we can continue to get your ideas into our plan. So please don't think that anything we say today is absolutely fixed in stone. We've got plenty of time to ensure that this facility is designed to meet your needs. So if we can have the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is something we already started our engagement. We've already started speaking to our public and our patients, and this is from a patient engagement event that I went to, and it still makes the hair stand up on the back of my arm because it's so exciting and brings through to me the excitement that we have in developing this brand new hospital. It says there's got to be a leap of the imagination towards a place of enablement, a place where unusual, fantastic and amazing things are possible. And that's the challenge that's been put to me and my team, and that's a challenge that we're going to stand up to. So let me just take you through a little bit about what we're planning to do today and what we're trying to achieve in our brand new hospital. So you will hear us say this a lot, and you'll hear my team say it a lot, and you'll hear the doctors and the nurses and the support staff and the porters say it a lot when you come and speak to people in our hospital. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is going to be a hospital that's going to be fit for the future, fit for the next 50+ years. We've got to get it right today. We've had a huge amount of support already in engagement, particularly from our clinical teams and from public and the patients, but we need more. We'll be engaging with you now, and we're going to engage with you over the next 5 or so years until the hospital is built, and then we'll continue to engage with you once that hospital is built to make sure we get it right. So these are really important events, but we are right at the outset, right at the start of our journey, and we really look forward to going on it with you. So Lance has set out the vision for the new hospital, and as you can see from the next slide, there are some really key components. Can we have the next slide, please? Some really key components to our new hospital, but it is going to be more than a hospital. It's going to be a better place for everybody to work, learn, and recover. It's going to be better for patients, better for staff, better for people. It's going to be a building on a human scale, a building built for humans to work and recover in. It's going to be a really important place. Lance has talked a little bit about the site and how important it's going to be, that access to recreational space, that community asset, that recovery component. It is going to be absolutely key to what we do. I've seen some chat in the box earlier saying food as medicine is going to be really exciting. We do have some really exciting plans that we hope we pull off. We're looking at putting a farm on our roof, calling it NHS Sky Farm, a farm so people can look and learn about the importance of food, the holistic view of healthcare. You heard Rob at the outset, who we're working really closely with, talking about those wider determinants of health, mental health, physical health, early intervention, prevention. This idea of having this working farm on the roof isn't just about having a farm because we can do it. It's about people learning about food, bringing communities in, bringing schools in, people understand that where food comes from, how important it is to their healthcare, how to prepare it, how to grow it, how to make it part of their healthcare. We're going to talk to you a little bit today about how we're going to bring all of this to life. We'll talk a little bit about technology, then Monica's going to talk a little bit about the clinical models that we're developing and what it looks like from a patient's perspective. And then our architects are going to come in and talk a little bit about specifically about some of those amazing spaces that we want you to get involved with, and we'll be asking you some questions with at the end. So now I just want to turn a little bit to technology, and this, we're hoping, will be the most technology-enabled hospital in the whole of the NHS when it's built. But what does this mean? What is a digital hospital, and what is a digital hospital of the future? Well, I think of a digital hospital around three main areas. The first is about improving patient experience. From the moment you book your appointment online or through your app, or when you're in your GP surgery, through to the digital check-in, when you turn up at the hospital and you check in automatically, or how once you are a patient in our hospital and you're in your bed, how you might access technology from the bedside, entertainment from the bedside, link to your loved ones at home. If we think about the COVID experience that we've been through at the moment, when visiting is really, really difficult and restricted, imagine a world where you're a patient lying in your bed, you can hook into your loved ones at home, speak to your loved ones at home as if they're there with you. So first and foremost, improving patient experience, making it a great place to be. Second for me is transforming patient care. We are here, of course, to deliver high quality patient care. That's what we do. That is our business. When you're in our hospital, that's what you're going to get from this 21st century building. So think about wearable technology, allowing the delivery of care, not just in our building, but at home, monitoring at a distance, making sure that we can deliver care where it best suits you. If you've got a long-term condition, if you've got asthma or heart disease or lung disease, actually, you don't want to be in a hospital all the time. You want to be managed at home. You want to be cared for at home. So using technology will really allow us to transform that patient care through remote monitoring, all the way through to using AI. So that's artificial intelligence. So we can use artificial intelligence for so many things: early identification of cancer, making sure that we book appointments together, really bringing all of that data to the fore, really making sure that we can use that data to transform the care we do, the care we deliver, and actually using that data to understand how we're delivering care and how we can deliver care in the future. Massive opportunities. So we talked about improving patient experience, talked about improving patient care, but there's also the smart building technology itself to revolutionise the environment within which we work and within which we deliver care. So we are aiming to be the first net zero carbon hospital in the country and the first all electric hospital in the country. We can only do that by using really innovative use of technology to manage the way the air moves in our building and managing the heat in the building, but also managing the way that people move through the building. It also allows us to track and trace our equipment so we know where everything is and how it's being used in the building. It allows us to manage the beds and the flow through the building. So really using the building to help us manage how we deliver care within that building. And right the way through to interactive wayfinding. We can use smart technology in the building. So when you come in with your app, you can find your way, you're guided through the building, so you can find your way to where you need to be through technology. I mean, the future is here and we are absolutely going to make the most of it. However, we also recognise that not everyone can get hold of technology, not everyone can use or interface technology. So of course, you'll be able to interface with human beings in the building. You'll be able to use normal ways of opening letters if that's what works for you, picking up a telephone and speaking to a human being. All of those will be available. But we do believe the technology revolution will revolutionise our hospital and make it fit for the 21st century. And of course, we need a building that's going to be ready for anything. We do know that our population is increasing and we have to be ready for that population increase. We do know that that we need to learn from our pandemic. We do know, therefore, that we need a building that's scalable. It needs to be able to grow to meet future needs. It needs to be flexible in order to manage very difficult situations, such as a pandemic, and it needs to be adaptable. It needs to be adaptable to different types of healthcare. I spoke to one of our non-exec directors, who's a cardiologist. When he started off in cardiology, he said, "Mike, we used to see 50 heart attacks a week." He said, now we see 50 heart attacks a month. If we designed a hospital for those days, we'd have been designing a very different facility. We know that healthcare is going to be different, so we know our building has to be able to respond to that. It's also very important to us that our building is accessible. It's been really key to us to make sure that we engage widely with a whole range of individuals. A whole range of individuals will be using our building, from learning disability to dementia, from partially sighted to physically compromised. We need to make sure that our building manages for everyone, works for everyone, not just for the able-bodied. It needs to be a place that's fit for all, and it will be developed by those people who will use it. And of course, as people are saying, there also needs to be enough parking, and we need to ensure that there's enough parking within our building. So next slide, please. So what's next? So we've done a lot already. We've already produced a lot. We've done a lot of work already. A bit technical here, but our outline business case, that's the business case that sets out our drawings, our 1 in 200 drawings, that shows where the different parts of the building fit together. It shows the walls, the doors, the floors, how it all fits together, how it fits on the site. That will be submitted in October this year. The following spring in 2023, have our full business case. That's our 1 in 50 drawings. That's the walls, the doors, the departments, but right down to the plug sockets, the equipment, the finishes, the floor finishes, all of the detail. At that point, we'll have a main contractor on board, and our build will start in the summer of 2023. Spade in the ground, summer 2023 with a fair wind, and summer 2026, the build will be complete with the building commissioned at the end of 2026. That may sound like a long time, but it's not. It's a really, really complex building. Hospitals are probably the most complex buildings you can build. So it's a relatively short period of time, and we're really working at pace to make it happen. Next slide, please. So that's it from me. More than happy to take any questions. Lance?
Thank you very much, Michael, and thanks for your passion coming through that. I think we've got time for a couple of quick questions. There's a few things coming up in the chat box, Michael, about the current site and links with other sites, the St Margaret's site and Herts and Essex, and also about the sizing and shaping of the current site. Can you just talk a little bit about how we've got to the shape and the size and the schedule of accommodation and what will happen on the other hospital sites?
Absolutely. So there will be healthcare delivered from all of the existing hospital sites. There will be a healthcare presence on all of those sites. We're working really, really closely with the CCG, the commissioners of those sites, to understand exactly what will be delivered from those sites. But I can reassure you that there will be an NHS presence on all of those sites. So the way we've designed our new hospital, we've come up with our schedule of accommodation, that's how many rooms we need. It starts off with understanding the population. So we look at the demographic change in the population, how the population will change over time. Then we look at the non-demographic change, so how the disease will change within the population. So will we see more diabetes? Will we see more emphysema? Will we see more heart disease over a period of time? So we look at that based on population trends. We then look at that and we look at the demand that generates. So how many operations do we see? How many outpatient appointments do we see for that population, and how will it increase? We then take that and we turn it into a schedule of accommodation, looking at our model of care, as Rob said, early intervention prevention, how we'll manage that population differently. That then turns into the number of rooms we will need. I think it's really important to say we absolutely recognise that the population is growing, the demand on services is growing, and our hospital will be bigger. It's going to be at least 10% bigger. We're going to have more beds. We're going to have more inpatient beds. We're going to have more maternity beds. We're going to have more gynecology beds. We're going to have more space in our urgent care departments. We're going to have more space right across the hospital. So it is going to be a bigger hospital working much more effectively and much more efficiently.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And can I ask you two other quick questions? So there's a question from Tim about how we actively planning for net zero carbon and how we're going to incorporate that into the design and facilities. So I know it's something that's close to your heart. And there's also, understandably, a number of questions and queries about access and ensuring that we've got good access to whatever site it may be that the new hospital is located on.
Two very big questions there, Lance. So net zero carbon is really important. So I won't go into all of the details, but because it is a very complex subject, I can't pretend to know all of the details. We've got some specialists working with us. So we're going for but basically it's a design that allows all of the energy that's created in the building to be recycled into the building. We're talking about things like ground source heat pumps. We're talking about having our own substation on the site. We'll have our own power supply into the site. We're talking about photovoltaics on the site to generate our own electricity. We're talking about how we can minimize the use of electricity in the first place. I can't tell you how complicated it is, because actually hospitals are massive users of electricity. So it's from everything we use, right the way through the supply chain, right the way through to how the building's designed, right the way through to how we generate energy and use energy on the site. So there's a whole range of stuff. And I think we should probably have a session on net zero carbon actually as one of our engagement pieces. I think people are going to be very excited by that, and it is groundbreaking stuff that we're doing. So access to the site, of course, it is going to be one of the key issues. So we're working really closely with our local authority partners. This is something we can't deliver on our own. It's something we absolutely need to work with our partners. So I'm already talking to Harlow, Essex, Epping, all of the local authorities about how we get access to the site. We know it's our number one issue. We're developing a travel plan, a sustainable travel plan to make sure it works, but we will be publishing that in the next couple of months.
Great, thank you, Michael. So there will be an opportunity to answer any further questions later. Please continue to put your queries and questions in the chat box. But for now, can I hand over to Dr. Monica Bowes, who's one of our consultant gastroenterologists and associate medical directors, and to talk through some of the clinical services and clinical service provision. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Lance. Good afternoon, everybody. Or evening, I should say, sorry. So it's my great privilege to speak at the session today, representing my clinical colleagues, the doctors, nurses and allied health professionals who are working together with all our colleagues to work around the programme for the new models of care, the integrated work and the new hospital that's been described by our colleagues so far. So for me and for my clinical colleagues, the focus really is you and our patient journey for you, as it is for others on this call, obviously. And what I wanted to share really is the way that health services that we're delivering currently are going to change, and going to change to focus more intensively than they already do around ensuring that you remain and continue to sit at the centre of our care. So we're using population health management and personalised healthcare packages and that vision to think about how we can develop those models of care for you to ensure that you get the right care at the right time by the right team and in the setting that's optimal for you. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in order to achieve this vision, with yourselves at the centre of our thinking and our care, and working with our patient panel and other patient representation, our clinical and operational teams have been thinking through with our local healthcare and system partners around wider community and our wider community and health social care providers around how we need to transform our services and modernise them to address all the opportunities available in the future around the new hospital programme and also around the new developments in the NHS that we've spoken about. So next slide, please. I'd like to introduce you, if I may, to Alex. So Alex has a patient journey with us in the current NHS health and social care system, and oftentimes we think about Alex visiting their GP with a problem. In the future, we hope that we as a wider health and social care system will be able to help you to address what you can with appropriate self-management and everything that you would wish to do in terms of enhanced healthcare provision in the community and opportunities for your health. So if in that scenario you've done everything that you would wish to do to address any of your health concerns and you wish to seek a professional opinion, you would visit your GP, and you do now. In that situation, your GP would make an assessment and work with you, and if they felt they could address your issues, they would do so. Otherwise, they would seek a second opinion from the hospital and work with colleagues at the hospital and make a referral. And in doing that, they would seek to get an opinion, and you would, in the traditional method, you would end up being at the hospital, have an appointment with us, and we would then go on to book you another occasion for investigations, and then bring you back again to the hospital for a follow-up appointment to be given your results, etc. So that's the kind of current state of play, and as you probably many of you will have experienced, that can take quite a long, drawn-out process to work through. So what's our vision for the future? Well, if we take Alex on a different sort of journey, obviously Alex will have addressed with population health and community-based resources, access to for all of those resources, would have addressed whatever concerns they had. And then if they did need anything from the healthcare system, would obviously look to address that with their general practitioner. But in the current frame of things, much exciting provision opens up for us, because what we'd like to be able to offer is a one-stop shop. So you attend the hospital, you have a clinical assessment, and you have the tests and investigations that you need. You then would go on to a scenario where results would be available to you electronically, should you wish them, by paper, in much more modernised manner. And should you need to see us again, we'd have the option then to bring you into a space where you can be seen in outpatients if you wish, and if that's what's required, or be managed virtually and see us virtually and access us in a much more modernised approach with new technology. And the benefit of that is that we can bring other colleagues into calls to consult with you, and use other methodologies to ensure that you get what you need and your care is centred on your personal requirements. It's really important for us that we can provide you with care where you need it, in your locality, in your home. And this is really ambitious. We are thinking of modalities such as giving chemotherapy to patients who need it in their own homes. That would be really forward thinking. There are a number of other things that we can look to do for you at home, working closely with our community partners. So just a few examples of things we can do, and there will be many opportunities going forward, as Lance and Michael have described, for us to explore this with you as service users, and for you to engage with us to help design those services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. A couple of things coming in the chat. One, Monica, can you just talk through briefly, or just give confirmation of the services that would be transferring from the current site to the new site? So no significant change in those, but obviously, as you were describing, being potentially provided in a very different way, linked in with our community and primary care colleagues.
Absolutely. So we will be providing all the services we currently do, but we are seeking to ensure that those are designed to be much more bespoke to individual needs. So the concepts such as I described, for patients who need care within their home, for us to be able to provide that. For patients who want to be managed virtually and have their advice given virtually. I have to share with you the most amazing journey that we've been on through the pandemic, if I may, for 2 minutes, Lance. This is really around the fact that, as you all know, while we've all been doing this work, colleagues have also been dealing with the pandemic response in the hospital. And we've learned some things from that. It has been a challenging time, but we have learned to work virtually, to provide virtual appointments, telemedicine. And for some patients, that's been incredibly valuable and released them a lot of their own personal time. For us, your time is valuable, and we want to use your time in interacting with you in an appropriate manner. So for people who need to come to the hospital, we are here for you. And that's really important. But should it be more convenient for you to interact with us with telemedicine or on the telephone, we really would want to offer that to you in the future. And I know that Lance and Michael will tell us more about that as we go on. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Monica. And then, Michael, could I wrap a few questions into one for you? So a number of questions about how long will the new hospital be designed to last for? Why do we need to move on to a greenfield site, and why was that the preferred way forward of the board? And why have we built the new building, the new adult acute assessment unit, but the new building out at the front of the hospital on the right-hand side as you come in? Could you wrap all of those into one in 60 seconds?
Yes, thanks, Lance. So let me wrap it up very quickly. So the hospital's going to last between 15 and 60 years. So we plan for a sort of 60-year time horizon. It could be longer. We're just working through the detail now. But the expectation it'll be here for at least 60 years. Greenfield site. Why a greenfield site? So we did a big options appraisal about 2 years ago, where we looked at a range of different options. We looked at approximately 20 off-site options. We whittled it down to one potential one. We've got one preferred way forward. We then looked at rebuilding on the current site. We also looked at rebuilding and refurbishing on the current site. It was by far the preferred option to build on a greenfield site. It's much cheaper, much quicker, and much more effective to build on that site. It also has a much less impact on our services. So can you imagine building a brand new hospital on our existing constrained site is extremely difficult and would take at least 5 years longer than building on a greenfield site. So the impact you have on patients and the public is massive. And if you think some people are here for the last weeks of their life, the last thing they want is a tower block being built next to them. So that was the preferred way forward. And so a greenfield site is by far the preferred way forward. Anything? Sorry, the last one's a new site, Lance. What was your last question?
And then the need to or why have we built some additional accommodation at the front of the hospital?
Oh, yes. So our hospital needs to survive for the next 5 or 6 years. We still need to ensure that we're delivering high quality services throughout this time. We've developed, our new model of care is developing at the same time. So we've had to continually develop and improve our existing site to make sure it is fit. We will not be investing significant amounts of money in new build after this year. This is the final year of significant investment on the site, but it's absolutely required to ensure we can deliver high quality care as we move forward. One of the benefits of a brand new hospital in a greenfield site is we don't stick things on the side. We can build it so it's much more effective, much more efficient, allows us to deal with patients much more effectively, improve delivering a much higher quality of care by working better as an organisation built and designed to work as one.
Thank you very much, Michael. And so now I think it's the perfect time to hand over to our architects. So we've got two groups of fantastic, amazing architects who've been working together. I'll hand over to Tom, who works for Gilling Dodd, who can then hand over to Tava, who works for CF Muller, and they'll just take you through some of the thinking that's happened to date. And then we've got some really specific questions and queries that we would like your views and thoughts on to help continue to shape our thinking and continue to shape the architects' thinking and designs and drawings as we go along. So, Tom, thank you for attending. And do you want to take through some of your ideas and thoughts thoughts around site massing and landscaping?
Yes, Tom Gilbert-Rule from Gilling Dodd Architects. As I said, been working with the trust for 2 years. So a lot of the development that we've been doing is we've been with ourselves. As we've covered, looking at lots of different options, lots of work up to this point. The images that we're going to share today, we're looking towards, as I said, there's been a lot of points on possible site locations, possible options. The elements that we're showing today is just one of those options. So it is not so much we're going to go into quite a bit of detail, but it's not so much about this scheme, it's about the concept. So everything that the previous slides have covered and introduced, it's far more about how we're reacting to them, how would every possible option or any location react to those. And we're using this particular image and particular option just to highlight those and to produce, to highlight them to yourselves and to gain your feedback and thoughts on them as well. So looking at this site in particular, every site has its opportunities, has its constraints. This one that we're testing in this scenario has an existing motorway location adjacent to it, which gives us real benefits of connectivity and good linkages, but it obviously brings with it that kind of noise, that movement, and that action onto the site, and that has to be incorporated in any design that might look at on this setting. Once you're kind of into the site and onto the site itself, it is got a great opportunity in this one. So a really good point of access, front of house, point of arrival, and lots of real opportunities surrounding that. So good views, good existing countryside, woodland spaces, and the potential of a waterway nearby as well. So all of those items that interact with the hospital itself, the acute environment, and going right back to that proposal of making it more than just a hospital, but making it a place that you'll visit, making it a care pathway. And obviously the site and the final selection of the site would be key to that. And this site in particular is obviously one we're very excited about, that gives great opportunities. And I've seen comments before about sun paths, about how the building sets in the environment. Obviously, any scheme we do would have to reflect all of that. And this, again, is one of those examples where we're looking at that. So again, this reiterates some of the items we covered, but they are just so key and so integral to the design we do. So connection to nature. Again, I'm sure most of you have been in hospitals, existing hospitals, where it's very corridor led, it's very dark, it isn't intuitive of where you're going. The connection to nature helps on both of those fronts. So it helps on that understanding of the outside space, that relationship to the environment, but also helps with wayfinding, giving that sense of place where you are in the building, even what floor you're on. Again, if you're in a corridor, if you're in a lift, that's all hard to connect to. As soon as we bring that kind of connection to nature, that outdoor space, that light, it just improves that feeling and improves that that understanding. So that kind of covers the circulation and logistics as well. Flexibility and adaptability. Again, there's been a lot of comments that have come through about future proofing, future ready. The scheme has to have that flexibility in the structure and in the grid. As Michael's alluded to, the services will keep changing, the requirements will keep changing, and any building, any option we're looking at, any proposal that we're developing has that flexible grid, big open grid, big structure that allows us to change and adapt that building as we go forwards. The last one on this slide, which I think was touched upon right at the beginning, but is key and does need to be represented in the concept, is the scale. You know, we need to approach this hospital. It needs to be human. It needs to be inviting. It needs to have changes of level, interest, and essentially that hospitals need to be a big building. Everything wants to be next to each other for the most clinical, efficient way of delivering things. But we don't want to kind of create this tall kind of tower block, and it feels like you're entering a very kind of daunting place. We want to bring people in comfortably and then navigate cleanly and smoothly around the building from that perspective. So looking at this example, which we'll see sat in the site in a second, when we've looked at it, these are just two examples of the floor plans. The site itself has a slope across the site, which is a real advantage because it gives us 2 ground floors, which from a clinical perspective is just perfect. Everybody wants to be at ground floor, have that easy access out, the option of entrances and ways to communicate around the building. So on that basis, this gives a really good feel for that. What we've looked at the lower ground is the opportunity that we could have a restaurant at the center of this, you know, big open glazing views, connectivity to that landscape, bringing that outdoor space in, and likewise open access out to that space as well as part of the kind of access and movement around those spaces. We've looked in this instance that oncology with access out and great views out would be a good use of space on that lower ground. And then FORS, or women and children's, start to utilise again that space. The last bit I'll say on this lower ground, what we've also looked to do is have a front of house and back of house. So you can, it's obviously there's a lot of detail and a lot of work to go on this, but you can see we're splitting the kind of red lines from the green lines. So the green is the patient, the visitor experience. And from that perspective, you just see the clinical environment, the front of house, the landscape, and then the red is the kind of porters, the back of house, the movement, what keeps the kind of heartbeat of the hospital running. And that all happens away from that clinical experience. So again, there's no sharing lifts from patients and visitors. We can split those flows and really kind of make it a smooth process. Going up to ground floor, again, this point of arrival, this front entrance that is really clear and identified, brings you in, takes you to front of the house experience, and again, maximizing these views out. Again, the idea this could be 2-3 stories of glazing with great views out, great connection to landscaping. And a key principle in this concept as well is looking to split very easy wayfinding. So from a point of arrival, we're avoiding that kind of go down the corridor, third door on the right, up a flight of stairs on your left. What we're looking to do is take a lot of complex building blocks and start to break them down as quick as we can. So you enter at a central point. Once you go left, you've split your choices down in half, and it'll be very clear and obvious of why you're going left and what that achieves. And then whether you then move vertically, again, once you get to the floor that you need to be on, your choices get to kind of they reduce down each step, and it's as simple as kind of left, right, and then picking a floor. And again, we avoid that kind of third door on the right kind of scenario. Again, looking at the ground floor and the accommodation, simple things like having outpatients there. They're the quick appointments, the quick in and out. So we're not looking to move that footfall right through the building, all the way through all the departments, up the floors. We're relating the clinical need to that experience, but obviously still relating it to front of house and entrance. Emergency department linking to imaging. We want to make these real good efficiencies in those clinical flows and ensuring that the quickest treatment can take place, again, without the kind of moving around and time lost in moving. We want the time spent on the clinical function. Moving up the floors from this point, and sorry, there's quite a lot to take in here, but the concept we're looking at is the levels continue up. The first floor is more of a patient-driven level. So we've got our surgery, our theatres, and our critical care. So that's more of a patient space where we're kind of heartbeat of the hospital taking place. Again, still utilising these views and this access out. At first floor as well, we're exploring this idea of the Sky Farm. So keeping that at the centre, just like the front of house, a shared space used by all, whether that be patients, visitors, education, local community. We want to make this a place of arrival rather than just a place you come when you're not well. And then when we go up to the third and second and third floors, or the higher levels, we've looked to utilise these, and utilising this concept and this site, the 360-degree views. Once we get up to these higher level of the buildings, everywhere has a good view and has a good aspect across the countryside. And we want to really maximise those in the wards where we've got the longer stays. So that's the kind of concept of the building is in this concept and this setting. Moving on to the site itself, there's obviously a lot to cover. There's a lot of work we're doing, but a key part is that it is a campus. So we don't see this as a hospital in a green field. This is a healthcare campus, and we want to bring as many activities onto this site and as many inclusions as possible, and obviously the links to the community as well. So again, going back to the landscaping one, making sure that we've got kind of green walks or part of cycle paths. We've talked about being part of the sculpture route. All of that wants to be brought into this site. Going across this site as drawn, and as we're looking at here currently on the left, is the idea of having a training and admin building, which would have education spaces in it and admin spaces, taking that out of the clinical footprint. In the middle is the main acute hospital, which is the kind of the anchor of the site. Then to the right, we're looking to bring mental health with us and give that provision and that connectivity and linkages. The blue is the possible for key worker accommodation and wider maybe patient hotel and things like that we might explore. The grey is the kind of more service and the energy centre of the building, the site. And the green is the potential for the ambulance hub to come with us. And again, the linkages to the nearby motorway and linkages to the emergency department as well, obviously improving those efficiencies. The image on the left shows how we're very keen. We want to utilise the existing landscape. Put bluntly, that's a free resource. Anything that's there now, we want to utilise, we want to interact with. But also anything we build up, any kind of concepts we develop, landscaping has to be at the heart of this. We want it to be a pleasant arrival, a clear indication of where the entrance is, and then you move through that space in a green space, in a pleasant space to meet, to dwell, to get your cup of coffee, to sit outside. That is all part of the journey rather than just an outpatient appointment that you go into and then you're going home. We want to provide more than that on the site, which ties into the concept we discussed to date. So this, we start to look at images now that look quite fixed and quite developed, but it is just us kind of working through the concept. So it is all about that setting in the environment. So as I said, the top element of trees and landscaping is existing. So again, on this instance, that's a really good benefit. We want to maximize the views of that, the interaction of it. We want to encourage patients, visitors, everybody to go down and utilize that space. Again, as I was saying, as part of the kind of cycle path, why wouldn't you, even if you're not going to the hospital for an appointment, be on that cycle route and come into the restaurant and utilize those spaces and break down those barriers of the kind of hospital being just a place to go when unwell or visiting relatives. Again, looking at the massing of the building, really trying to step it down, create levels. It does need to be, it is a hospital and it needs to be as efficient as possible. And there is a certain size that comes with that. But we can really break that down and create an interest and, again, bring it back to the human form and the human setting. And we've been looking at things like creating a green infrastructure, a green surrounding to the hospital, so that as we enter it, we feel like we're coming into a green space, and then the hospital opens up in front of you. And again, that's all part of the aesthetics and a part of the concept that we've been looking to this date. Looking at some of the visuals, I think that, again, these are us kind of exploring the ideas. I think the top right stands out to me as far as breaking down that massing. You can see the steps in the building and taking you from a lower setting and then building the kind of building blocks up from there. The top left image kind of clearly shows this central entrance point and the kind of plaza and taking you into that. I've always said that we want to avoid any kind of big blue signs that says main entrance this way. The architecture should speak for itself. From the point of parking, from the point of entrance, it should lead you that way. And then the final image in the bottom left just starts to, again, look at this concept of what would the Sky Farm look like on the roof, and then the idea that we could have this front of house element with this large glazing that would really connect to the landscape, bring that in as that first experience, that first point of entry before you then go into the more clinical spaces beyond that. So homing in on the landscaping, there's a lot. I've probably covered a lot of that as we've gone. There's a lot of design going into that and concept going into that as we speak, and connecting into the wider landscape. But the Sky Farm, again, I think there is a real opportunity. It will only work if it is a community space, if it has that involvement, has that connectivity, and is more than a landscaped area. We've designed the scheme with large courtyards. They're not light wells. They're not designed just to bring the light in. They're going to be usable spaces that, again, we're going to encourage as much kind of planting, green feel, and improve that aspect and improve that feeling as you navigate around the hospital and use the spaces. And, just not for just patients and visitors, but staff as well also. So I do apologise. That's a lot of information to kind of to pass across you, and hopefully it shows that in this option and the options we're looking at, the concepts we're taking forward, how we're delivering the clinical need into the built environment, and as I say, continuing this aspiration to really create the hospital for the future.
Tom, can I just ask you a quick question? There's been a couple of questions in the chat box on the right-hand side. A couple of questions around the scale of the building. So it looks very long and thin, and the distances look quite far. Do you mind just touching on that for a little bit, Tom?
Yes, of course. Yeah, no problem. So yes, it does sit on a kind of X and Y axis. So that's part of the wayfinding. We've been very keen to have this front of house element that connects the landscape. But the connectivity is actually quite short. So when you look at the main cores, the vertical cores and the departments, that movement isn't very far. Once you then get into a ward or into a department, that's when you then go into the kind of wider, longer footprints, if you will. So what we're looking to do is that movement from department, that time wasted or that visitor experience, time wasted from a clinical perspective, or that visitor experience is actually quite short and is concentrated to that center, all relating to that front of house element. But then once you get into the department, that's when it then kind of stretches out. And that's, essentially we do need that clinical output. And by making them the kind of, we call them the donut, but the square sizes, it does maximize the light to those spaces and the views out, which we see is key for this concept in this setting.
Thank you, Tom. And there's one more question, if you could just touch on very briefly, if you don't mind, about the massing of the building and the landscape and how it may be imposing on the landscape because it's such a big building.
Yeah, and there is, we're not looking to pull any wool over people's eyes. We are looking to break that massing down as best we can. But there is no secret. A hospital, if we meet all the clinicians, they would like everything next to everything. There is nobody that doesn't need to be next to somebody else. So that does give it a verticality. It does mean that there's a stacking, there's efficiency in that, and things tie against each other. You know, if we make it less vertical and less of a mass, then we start to increase all the travel distances. So there is that challenge. So we have to offset and balance the two.
Thank you, Tom. Sorry to interrupt you, Teva. Over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Tom and Michael and Lance, Monica. I'm Teva Hess, and I haven't been working on the project for as long as everybody else, but it's been quite a busy time, and I can't say enough that I'm really honored. It's a privilege to work on this hospital, and so we are working at the concept stage. So we've got ideas about the hospital, but tonight's session is really about finding out what you think. So our view of the hospital, these are these kind of donuts. We call them donuts, even though they're square. And these are clinical spaces. And that is basically what Tom showed you, but just looking at it from the other side. So what we're talking about now, front of house, means everything that's not a clinical space. So it's not a treatment or a ward space or the A&E or an imaging diagnostic space. It's the lobby, the reception, the cafe, maybe some retail spaces. And part of the questions we're going to ask you about is what kind of spaces there should be in those areas, and what's the mix, and your ideas basically on all of that. So our ideas, just because we're coming to you with some thoughts, is that the front of house area should be an antidote to the clinical areas of the hospital. And by that we mean it's, we all know the kind of lighting and the kind of surfaces that have to be made for infection control in a hospital. But we're thinking about the extensive use of wood and large glazed surfaces. So this is the entrance, if you can see my cursor, the entrance which is south facing. And some of the questions earlier were about light and glare. And what we're intending to do is have an overhang that can make a kind of very even type of illumination. And at the back, which is north facing, that's where the big glazed screen opens up out to nature. And if you look at it this way, we're looking at the front of house being a tall space, so it's double height. We like that because it can be naturally ventilated. If it's it naturally, in terms of climate, it's very good because hot air rises, so it's easier to maintain a good temperature. And on top of the front of house, that's where we have the Sky Farm. So we're still bringing as much greenery into and around the building. And so the experience of being in this space is to look out over the landscape. So Tom mentioned earlier, we're at 2 levels, the preferred site. So the lower level is probably where we would have the cafe and restaurant, and the upper level is where we have the main entrance. And you'll see some slides about that in a moment. So I mentioned before, we're really keen to make extensive use of wood. Why wood? Well, because it's warm, it's natural, it's very good at absorbing humidity when it's very hot and humid. And it releases humidity on, in the wintertime when it's very dry. It just feels warm and inviting, and we want this space to be a warm and inviting space. And some of the other ideas you see here is this kind of idea of even illumination and also views out from many directions. So wherever you look in the front of house, you're either looking into courtyards or probably more beneficially out into the landscape. And so that idea kind of goes into the idea of the front of house or the hospital concourse or the lobby. And our thoughts are, we want it to be a space that's a community space. So we imagine a hospital which is not just for sick people. Obviously, people come in groups, and there's a large number of people that come with family members or to see family members. But there also might be other community uses in the evening. We're thinking about maybe possibly some agile working spaces in the lobby. We're thinking about, landscaped green areas, plants growing inside the lobby, cafes. So there's things to do. You can have, beverages or snacks or even a meal. And this also gives you an idea of the kind of treatment of materials, even illumination, extensive use of wood and light that guides the journey. So just going to show a few examples, and these are really just to get your reaction. So in this example, you see the extensive use of quite strong colors, and that's one way to make wayfinding clearer in a hospital. You can also see these kind of sign symbols. We all recognize the NHS kind of signage, and the hospitals I'm familiar with, you have to navigate through endless signs pointing down long lobbies. But we're talking about, we would like the front of house areas, circulation areas, to be generous, to not be full of signs, to make it more intuitive and have light from many different directions. This is another example. We like the idea of a big lobby. You're seeing this lobby without people in it. We also think it's very important that when you come from the front door, you see right away, you see the information desk. And Michael, I thought, spoke very eloquently about digital transformation in the NHS and digital wayfinding. But of course, there will be people at an information desk because not everybody is digitally enabled. And so that is absolutely a must. So you'll come into the hospital, you'll see people as well as digital information kiosks. So this is sort of a menu of how we see the front of house space. It's light and spacious. There's a recognizable reception desk. You've also got digital kiosks to assist with wayfinding. We want it to be as high a quality space as possible, but obviously working to a budget. And that was what somebody said earlier, wrote in earlier about more organic forms. We think there's mileage in making the structure repetitive and modular, but really high quality. And again, some of the other ideas that I've already touched on, views to nature. When you ask people what the most valuable spaces within hospitals are, and we've done that on number of occasions, usually the gardens and the courtyards and outdoor spaces are the highest valued spaces within a hospital. And that goes for staff, visitors, and patients. So that's really an important element of hospital design. And then you see cafes, and also something that we'll be asking you about later is a mix of seating, because some people want to consider a visit to the hospital, if you're an ambulatory patient or outpatient, as a very private thing, and other people come in large groups with relatives and friends. So really quickly, this is what we're assuming. So you come in, right as soon as you come in, there's an information kiosk. That information kiosk, almost with line of sight, will point you, as Tom said, right or left. So you go to a vertical core, which is here or here. So it's very simple wayfinding. And then we're looking at the spaces within the front of house to almost be like stalls in a marketplace, or that's our idea. It'd be really good to hear your comments on that. So a mix of commercial, multi-faith, prayer rooms, meditation rooms, quiet rooms, volunteer spaces, and so forth. And then also waiting within the space, there would be a lot of seating for different types of waiting. And then the cafe possibly down below. Yeah, so that's, I think now I'll hand it over to, if I can, hand it over to you, Michael, is that right?
Thanks, Tiva. Oh. Sorry, could we ask people to go on mute while I'm talking? I'm getting some terrible feedback. Thank you very much. David, so if you can ask a couple of questions, there's some very specific ones which I don't think we'll jump into, but we're capturing all of these on the side, guys. So we are picking up all of your comments, and we are making sure we record all of these. Sorry if we can't answer everything. There's been a lot coming in. But there's been some very specific things, particularly around keeping those big open spaces clean with the traffic that we've got. Tom or David, with your experience, do those sort of wide open spaces for entrances work well in hospitals? Have you done them before? Have you seen them work? What are the issues that we face around particularly keeping things clean? Because that's very important, obviously, for us as a hospital.
Well, maybe I'll jump in. I think we think of the hospital spaces, front of house should be like a highway for everybody. I think it's very important that it's uncluttered, it's open and spacious, and so you don't feel like you're within a, you don't enter the hospital building, and you're immediately in a corridor without daylight. So we really want it to be kind of a different kind of space, much more open, inviting, uncluttered, and there'll be plenty of opportunities and plenty of corners for people to sit and wait or gather. But I think that's.
I think if I can just add to that as well, Trevor, yeah, I think the technology won't stop at the patient side either. We're looking at robotic cleaning, which can do it where they get out of hours or not. There's no out of hours at the hospital, but at nights where there's less footfall and areas like that where the robots can go off and clean and then go back to their charging point. So using technology along with good design would be our way forward.
Thanks, Tom. I think it's fair to say we won't be the first hospital to design something in there. And I can't, something I want to pick up myself, guys, rather than you. There's been a lot of questions, a lot of comments on the Sky Farm. We're absolutely picking that up. It seems to be splitting opinion at the moment. That's one of the reasons we're putting it out there at the moment. It is a concept. We would really value your ideas. I forgot to say it is based on the Boston Healthcare Medical Center model. They have one there. It has a massive impact on their communities, but we are really interested in your views. That might be something else that we pick up at a later event. Okay, so should we move into the question and answer session then? I think that's next, isn't it, Ruth? Okay, so guys, we're going to ask you a few questions now, a few specific questions for a bit of fun, so you can have some proper input. As I said, we've been gathering all of your thoughts and the questions along the side. We've been trying to answer as many as we can. We won't be able to answer them all. We know it's frustrating if we don't answer your question, but please bear with us. We hope to answer them in future days. You'll see at the top of your screen, you've got a little hand icon. We're going to be asking you to use that icon to vote in a moment, to put your hands up and vote. Once you've voted, I'll also ask you to put your hands down so you can vote for the next question. So please be prepared to click on that icon. Also, please put your comments in the box as well. As I said, we'll answer those that we can. We might not get to everything. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first question is, have you visited the hospital in the last 12 months? So if you could vote now, put your hands up, press a little icon. You'll see it on the top right-hand side there. Thank you, Helen, for voting. Fantastic. How many people we've got voted so far? 25 people out of the 100-odd people. So about 30, 40% of people, 35% of the people here today have voted the hospital in the last 12 months. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. If you're unable to see the hand icon, please type yes in the box. So that's perfect. Thank you. The little test question. So about 40% of people have been in the hospital in the last 12 months. So now we're going to get into some of the detail of how this works. So what would you like to see? And I'll run through these. Please put your hand up to one or many. It doesn't really matter. And I'll be judging the speed hands go up as well as the number of hands that go up. So what would you like to see in the design to create a positive experience? So who thinks wide open spaces are important? We talked a lot about those wide open spaces. So pretty quick response to that. We're seeing about 35, again, about 40% of people. Okay, I'm going on to the second one. So put your hands down, please. Second one, natural light. Who thinks that natural light, that view to the outside, that natural light flooding in is a really important design feature to give that positive experience? Yeah, by far the highest. And what I would say is actually that was one of the highest on our last one as well. So about 45 people saying that's important. What about outside views? Views of the outside, views of a green space, views of a tree. We know that trees are healing. We know that there's a lot of evidence out there that shows if you can view a tree, is actually a healing experience. About exactly the same, guys, as natural light. So thank you. If you could pop your hands down, that's great. So we had some comments on the seating. What about a mixture of seating, mixture of comfortable seating in those key spaces? Is that a key design experience for you? Or actually, does it not really matter that much how comfortable it is? It's more about just having a place to perch. Okay, about 30% of people putting their hands up there. Going into reception. So what about the visible, really visible reception point, a place to go, a place to find your way, a place to go for information and help and support? Again, that's higher actually than natural light. So much higher than natural light, another 10% on top actually. So that visibility, that ability to find your way, that ability to be able to ask for help or find your way in the building is really important to you guys. Okay, hands down, please. Last one in this section before we move on. What about access to refreshments? So being able to get yourself a tea, a coffee, a sandwich in those big waiting areas, get yourself some lunch, really important to you. But again, we've got really tied across the piece. So I would say it was visible information points, natural light, outside views, and access to refreshments were all pretty much equal, so all pretty important. By the way, guys, we obviously are looking at all of these things. We're just trying to get a feel from you about what is really important to you. So thank you very much. So you heard me at the beginning talk about technology and the important use of technology and how we can use technology in a very, very different way. We're just trying to get a feel again about what is important and what's not important to you. So we're going to run through these again, same piece. If you could put your hands up when I ask a question, put them down again at the end, that'd be great. So first is electronic confirmation of appointments. So we contact you electronically, you book online or your doctors, you get a text, you get an email, electronically tells you that your appointment's booked. It's what we all expect, isn't it? Exactly. 45% of people, 46% of people all think that's important. It's what we get every other walk of life. Why don't we get it when we book our medical appointments? Well, you will do in the future if you come to PAH. So something we've been talking about a lot is about linking your appointment to the place you're going to be seen in the hospital. So when you turn up on your phone, PAH app will guide you to where you need to be in the hospital. Automatic wayfinding, digital wayfinding. Is that important to you? Do you think that would be useful? Please put your hands up now if you think it would, if you think you'd like to see that as a feature. Actually, that's much higher than we had at the last group, but still lower than automatic confirmation of appointments. So hands down, please. Third out of 5, so electronic call system. So you're sitting in a main waiting space in the hospital, you have an electronic call system, tells you when you need to go to your appointment, shows you the way to the appointment, tells you where to get there. So that's quite low, actually. So we're seeing the mid-20s, mid to low 20s. That's quite low. That was much higher in the last group. In fact, we're seeing a very different balance from this group. The next one's quite interesting. So as part of our technology revolution, what we can do is give patients access to their own medical information. So they can either at the bedside or in their digital device have access to their own medical information. We call it their care record. Who thinks that would be an important innovation in the future? Please put your hands up now if you think that's going to be really important for you to see your own medical record. Okay, it's a 40, but it's not quite as high as typical digital confirmation of appointments. I thought that would be higher, people having access to their own care. So that's really, really interesting for us. The final one for us is virtual check-in. Yes, you'll still be able to have humans, but who would like to be able to just turn up at the hospital, scan their QR code, tap in their name, whatever it might be, and virtually check in without having to speak to someone? We know you're here. You've automatically checked in. You're here. Who thinks that is going to be an important innovation going forward? Pretty much the same, about high 30s, low 40s. Pretty much the same. Thank you, everybody. Put your hands down. That's brilliant. Thank you. So absolutely clear digital confirmation of appointments being the most important component. So this is quite interesting for me. This is one of the design features we're really thinking about in the new hospital. We really are interested in your views on this, guys. So I'm going to off the piece first of all. We're thinking about having a central waiting space for the hospital. Instead of going off to your little department, having little waiting spaces dotted all around, who thinks a central waiting space would be a really important, would be a useful component for a new hospital, would be a good design feature? Put your hands up now. You have access to coffee, access to drinks, access to the really comfortable seats, the views, the vista out over the countryside. Not huge, but not low, again 30s, mid 30s. So that's quite interesting. So if we do have that space, and we are planning on these spaces at the moment, if we do have those spaces, we just like to understand a little bit of what's important to you. So cafes and retail spaces. Who would like to see cafe and retail spaces in those central waiting spaces? Grab a coffee, grab yourself a magazine, have a sit down, grab yourself a sandwich should you need to if you're waiting for a loved one to come back from their appointment. Yeah, mid-30s, absolutely bang mid-30s. What about accessibility needs? How accessible they are, easy access from all different walks of life. Is that really important to you? It's definitely important to us. Again, mid-30s, climbing 40s, absolutely, about the highest we've had, actually 40. So thank you for that, guys. different types of seating and waiting areas. So instead of just having your bog standard seats and tables, different types of seating, soft, hard, table, non-table, tucked away. Who thinks it's important to have a variety of different types of seating, different types of waiting? Not people not that bothered about 26, highest about 26, 27. Okay, privacy and dignity. What about tucked away spaces? Spaces where you can be, you've had some difficult news, you're not in the main thoroughfare, tuck yourself away, bit of privacy and dignity, tucked away from the main thoroughfare.